They are heading to what they think are safe havens to continue their plotting and otherwise advance their toxic ideology of hate, death, and intolerance wherever they are allowed to hide. We expect that some will look to travel to the United States to carry out attacks. But the current court injunction, of course, prevents us from taking steps right now to improve the security of the homeland until we see how that court action plays out.
All right. A lot of people think the court action, that is presumably if it goes to the Supreme Court and they rule on this, whether the president has hurt its chances for things to go his way, given his tweets on his preference for the earlier version that was less politically correct. Well, the Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly not making the case, but some sort of travel ban limitation should be in effect right now. Let's get to read on all of that with Bill Gavin, the former FBI New York Assistant Director. So much to get into with you, Bill. So let me begin first with what the Secretary is saying about some sort of ban put in place. My question is whether the President hurt the chances of that happening by telling the world, more or less, we should have gone with the original one.
Neil, somehow, in so many ways, I don't know how to explain some of the tweets of the President. Has he hurt himself? Most of the time, he is the one that causes himself some problems. I support a lot of what he has to do, but the manner in which he does it is most confusing. If, in fact, he calls it a ban, and his attorneys are trying to counsel him against doing that because it's going to impact negatively when this case reaches the Supreme Court, then he ought to pay attention to them. And obviously, he thinks his way is the only way. And it is confusing for the American public, and I'm sure it's very confusing for his attorneys, and it's going to create a controversy in the Supreme Court. Now,
I'm no lawyer, but even the fact that I'm not, I was able to sort of say, well, that could cause problems with the Supreme Court right there, to say nothing of the long record of tweets you have on this very subject that could complicate it. Leaving that aside, do you think anything will be left in place, or any kind of policing of those who get into this country will be in place beyond what we have now?
That's very difficult to say because, again, it goes back to what the Supreme Court has to say on this when it finally reaches the Supreme Court.
Right.
He has put himself in a difficult position because most of the objection by the federal courts and the appeals courts have been based on the fact that he said these things during his campaigning.
Bingo. But these latest things, Bill, that you alluded to are posts that like now in recent days.
Yes, they are, and that's what does him so much damage. His attorneys have said, fine, we can bifurcate this. This is what you said when you're a candidate. This is what you can't say as a president, and he said it anyway. And as a matter of fact, he reverted to what he said as a candidate. It's not going to help his case at all, Neil, in front of the Supreme Court. It just won't.
Bill, let me ask you about the rest of this 25-year-old woman for leaking secrets. Normally, you hope at least, and assuming that was the case, if it's true, that you reveal the leaker, you stop the leaks, or you slow the leaks. What does history suggest?
In this particular case, this is kind of different, Neil, because in most of the other cases where we had release of classified information, somehow the public and defense counsel have tied that to the greater good of telling Americans what a horrible country we live in, that these people in the intelligence field were impinging upon our privacy. And so that took on a life of its own. This young lady, reality winner, is probably going to, in reality, be a loser because she's this will be the first case that's coming out where the information that she released doesn't fall into that kind of a nebulous category, and it's pretty cut and dry. And really, the country, the White House, the Justice Department are all looking to convict somebody who leaked classified information, and this young lady is in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Real quickly, I do notice that 25 wasn't that high-ranking an official, but had access to highly sensitive material, as did Snowden in his days. Does everyone have these high-security passes? I mean, it just kind of worries me.
It worries me, too, as well, Neil. First of all, this is coming from a contract employer.
Right.
How well does the contractor vet these people? Secondly, it's up to NSA to vet them even in a tighter situation than the contractor does. And when do you how well do you school these people once they get into your intelligence agency on what the rules and regulations are and how you are going to enforce those rules and regulations, and how well part of that whole problem is overseeing what they have access to and what they're doing with it. And this young lady walked out with some information concerning the case at hand of the Russians with the voting situation. So it's not a good position for her to be in. And I think probably the intelligence agencies need to vet probably a little bit better or tighter than they're doing right now. I'm sure they're trying to do their best, but occasionally these things slip through the crack, but this is the worst time of the world for her to do that.
Yeah, I hear you. Bill Gavin, great catching up with you.
Thank you, Neil.